Right, so I'd like to give you an overview of this hot seat process. So firstly, why do we do a hot seat? And the answer is pretty clear, is we want to elevate the candour in the team. Why is elevating the candour in the team important? Well, it doesn't really matter how you look at team performance or team development or high-performing teams, whether you look at it through the forming, storming, norming, performing model, which everyone's very aware of, or whether you look at Lencioni's model of a cohesive team built on trust, or you look at the Google Project Aristotle, where they looked at and examined all their teams and they tried to figure out which were the teams that performed at the highest level, and they found that psychological safety was the key piece. It doesn't matter which one of these we look at, or others in fact, candour sits at the base of it. The ability to have a candid conversation, an honest, unfettered, very direct conversation about what's going on in the team is the key foundation on which you can build a high-performing team. So what we're doing here is we're creating a process where you can have that candid conversation in the form of giving each other feedback. And what I've found is by doing that, people break down the barriers of what's okay to say in the team, and then all conversations become more and more candid over time. So let's have a look at what that looks like. How do we prepare? So effectively what we're trying to do is we're trying to do two things. We're trying to tell everybody on the team what are the things that inspire you about them, and what are the things that they could improve through your eyes. And we have to do some preparation in order to do this. So let's look at what you need to do. Before the session, you really want to prepare, or you have to prepare, and you should prepare in written form for everybody. So write down on a page what the things are that inspire you about that person and what you think are the areas where they could improve. And you should also do that for yourself. So literally, perhaps a page per person on the team, draw a line down the middle. On the left you put inspire, and on the right you put improve, and you list the items. Why do you write it down? Well, by writing it down, firstly you demonstrate to the person that you've given it proper thought, so you're not just talking off the top of your head. And when you come to give the feedback, you don't share the written form, but you are able to read it off a list, and you're able to give the person a well thought through piece of feedback rather than just something that you've thought of in the moment. And ideally, you are only giving feedback that you have observed. So you're not passing on feedback from other people, or I've heard that you do. No, you're talking about things that you have observed yourself. So this is what you do before the session. In the session itself, you're going to speak for yourself, as I said earlier. The feedback should be actionable. It should be based on behaviors, and you should give specific examples. Try and avoid unfounded judgments where you're trying to leap to conclusions. For example, if somebody's late for a meeting, say to them, this meeting, that meeting, and this third meeting, you were late for the meeting, and I really felt like you let me down. That would be feedback. A judgment would be, you are late for every meeting, and you break down the whole team spirit by being late for the meeting. So you've jumped to a judgment because you're not sure that the whole team spirit has been broken down by being late. So you speak for yourself, you speak by your own experiences, and you don't jump to huge judgments. Right. Then when you're receiving feedback, the key piece here is that the only reply is to say thank you for the feedback. We don't get into a conversation in this process. You can, outside of the process, go and have a follow-up discussion with somebody and ask them a question about it. But in the process, we say, thank you for the feedback. Why do we do this? Well, because if we end up in a conversation, we dilute the whole effort and energy that everyone's put into giving feedback. The process works because there is a structure to it, and we break down the structure if we get into a conversation. So we just don't do it. We don't get into a conversation. All you do at the end of the feedback is say, thank you for the feedback. Interesting for me, I've observed over doing this hundreds and hundreds of times, is that some people prefer negative feedback and hate the positive, and some people prefer the positive feedback and hate the negative. We're all just different, or some combination of that. It's useful for you to pay attention to what causes you comfort or discomfort, and you should be looking for themes and blind spots. So things that you've never heard before. Somebody says something that you've never had feedback, or it's never even occurred to you. That's interesting. It may or may not be something that you want to do something about, but it's interesting. Look for things where you get an emotional response. Somebody gives you feedback and it really sort of makes you feel something, good or bad. That's interesting. Pay attention to it, and there's perhaps something to note there. So let's go through the process. Each person gets a turn in the hot seat. We then go around the room, and each other person gives feedback to the person in the hot seat in 2 rounds. The first round is 1 to 3 specific areas of examples where I feel you could improve, and the second round is 1 to 3 specific areas or examples where you inspire me. Speak for yourself. Don't build on others. So don't say, I want to agree with what the person before said, or I don't have much more to add. Everything's been said. That's terrible feedback. Say it in your own words, even if it is the same feedback. When receiving feedback, on the other hand, as I said, the only conversation to have is to say thank you. Thank each person as you get the feedback. Take notes. Have a notebook with you. Have your laptop. Have an iPad, phone. Write down notes. Scribble down as best you can. You won't remember everything. It's quite a lot to take on. So write down notes as you go. And just to iterate again, we don't get into a conversation in the process. Good. And then we move on to the next person. They move into the hot seat. The order we figure out on the day. And I'll obviously go through this process with you on the day before we actually start again. Lastly, just a couple of things to pay attention to. Listening to other people's feedback for other members of your team is interesting because you get to hear what people notice in each other. So it's not just about you when you're in the hot seat or when you give in feedback and then you switch off the rest of the time. Pay attention to what other people are saying to each other because that's interesting about your team that you're a part of and how you operate in the team. Sometimes it's just good to hear people say things we might know very well. I'm a very inspirational person, but you hear it said by 2 or 3 other perspectives from people. That's useful. You can learn something from it. And contradictions are also fairly normal because everybody's looking at you through their own lens. One person says you talk too much. Another person says, I wish you would say more. This is not unusual. And you need to decide what you take out of the feedback. It's entirely up to you. There's no expectation or onus that because you've received this feedback that you need to now walk out of the session and change. You will sift through it, which is why you write it down. You'll get time to reflect on it afterwards. We'll have a general reflection after the session. Anything that comes up, you're welcome to share as much or as little as you like. But the idea is that you come out of this and you make the decision about what you want to change and what you want to keep the same, what you want to build on and do more of, what you want to do less of. And that's the hot seat. Look forward to doing it with you.